Welcome to the Career Wanderlust podcast, your compass for new career horizons. Today, we are talking with Alex Moresco. Alex is the founder of Moresco Public Relations and Communications, bringing a wealth of experience spanning entertainment PR, talent relations, and healthcare PR. She has worked with renowned companies such as Nike, Complex Magazine, and Facebook Watch. 4 years ago, Alex's personal health journey led her to specialize in healthcare PR, leveraging her lived firsthand experiences with chronic disease and her expertise as a professional patient to craft effective communication strategies. Now, Alex has also raised significant funds for tick-borne illness research, actively lobbied in Washington, D.C., and she sits on the executive board for national nonprofit Project Lyme and the emerging leader board for Nashville-based cancer nonprofit Nashville Wine Auction, which is amazing. I'm really excited to learn more. Alex, thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so
Oh, I
excited.
Me too. I'm really curious about your career path and the things that you've tackled along the way. And I love that you've done a little bit of everything, falling into even starting your own company now. I would love to know if there is a piece of career advice that has helped you along the way. Is there anything that you found that has brought the most to you throughout your career?
I think that there's probably different pieces of advice at different periods in my career that have been the most impactful. And I'm sure we'll get more into this in our conversation. But when I was graduating college, I was torn between going to staying and working at Nike corporate and starting my own entertainment PR firm, which I had the opportunity to do very young. And I sat down with a trusted advisor to walk through it and say, what do I do? Am I crazy? And I'll never forget, he said to me, if you're going to bust your ass, do it for yourself because nobody can take it away. And that's how I started what originally was my entertainment PR firm. And it's something that I have always lived by is I'm going to bust my butt and put a lot of time and energy into something I want to do it for myself. I want to feel good about it. I think a second piece of advice for me that has been very powerful over the last year as a female in business, let alone a younger female in business that owns my own company. I started working with an executive coach last winter who has really nailed into me the fact that no one is going to believe in you unless you believe in yourself. You have to step in your power. You have to know your worth. You have to know that what you bring to the table is just as good as anybody else.
Mhm.
And
So
that's
good.
something that I think like we're probably all ever working on.
Oh,
So
definitely. And what have they given you any advice to help you do that? Is there anything that's helped you step into that power?
yeah, it sounds very simple, but I have adopted a journaling practice and a meditation practice. I think it's also been development and a lot of hard work around communications and how I interact either with counterparts or I'm in healthcare. It's a very male driven industry, let alone for what I do, very senior executive based, male driven industry. And how do you sit at the table with people in those positions and showcase yourself in the same way that they do?
Yes.
And once again, it's taken a lot of career work with a coach, which I think in itself, it's a challenge to ask for help sometimes. It's a challenge
Mhm.
that you need help in career development. And in reality, there's nothing wrong with it. We can't be experts and perfect at everything.
No, have finding a coach to help you up level your game is a big career move. It is one of those stepping stones that I've seen so many people take them from where they are to just that higher level that they just couldn't get there themselves. And we need help, and we struggle with asking for help. So I love this, and there's so many different pieces that I love, and I love that you went back to the basics. I know you said this is the basic, but really so much of what helps us grow is going back to those basics, right? If you're not meditating, if you're not keeping a journal about the things that you feel gratitude for or the things that you feel good about doing for yourself to help remind yourself of all
Yeah.
the good things that these are things that make a big difference. And the point being that so often you will for women, women will find themselves in a position where it might be a male dominant executive table. And being comfortable with that seat and finding that power is a very big deal. I'm wondering if there's anything that you've practiced or anything helped you feel comfortable taking that seat that you could share with other women who might be feeling the same way.
Yeah, I think, and whether it's male or female, with these executive tables or with these company boards, or now I deal with a lot of boards that are mostly made up of like venture capitalists, which is very different, very numbers driven. I think it has actually forced me to take a look at how I present things strategically and how I go into conversations with confidence and really reworking my vocabulary to say, oh, I think this would do well, or versus we have looked at what has performed highly. And based off of that, this is our recommendation for
Mm,
Q1 or whatever it is that we're
yes.
discussing. So I think looking at my vocabulary, which is something I have just become on my own, I think very cognizant of,
Mhm.
even in the way that I like email now. And I refuse to say, oh, I'm so sorry to bother you. It's just, oh, here is XYZ. And it's something that I reinforce to like my whole team. I'm like, I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did when you are coming into leadership. And so I think that's the first piece of it is like having that confidence and adjusting how I am speaking in these rooms. And I think the second thing for me, once again, going back into an internal step, like reset and stepping into my power of I have this expertise. I belong here. I believe that I belong here. I believe that I am the best person to be doing this work in itself is a really powerful thing. And once again, it takes a lot of internal work and also a lot of external work and getting quiet before these meetings. You'll probably hear me through this conversation talk a lot about getting quiet, journaling, meditating, gut checks. What is my gut telling me? My gut is telling me that this is a great opportunity, not that it's something I should have anxiety over, so on and so forth. Yeah, I think that's
Oh, it's
probably
so important.
go ahead.
Just what you're saying, the gut check, when taking the time, slowing things down, paying attention, all of these things are so important that in our society in this day of age, we're not always paying attention and we're moving so fast and doing so many things and just trying to react. That just taking it, that moment to be with yourself and quiet it down and pay attention to how you're feeling and what you're thinking, so important. And so much of what you're saying really goes back to the key. I mean, that the key personal development, right? The think as if, speak as if, act as if. And it's a resetting. And so I love that this advice. It's what you're going in and you're visualizing, you're changing your beliefs, you're thinking as if, you're looking at the way you're speaking and you're changing the way the words you're using. You're speaking as if, and then that's all translating into the way you're acting as you come to this table. I think this is wonderful advice for really any person and anything that they want to do. Really wonderful. Visualization is incredibly powerful. I found that's been a masterful thing in my own life as well.
Yeah,
So,
I think when we look at anything like getting quiet, visualization, meditation, it's funny because I used to feel guilty almost for taking the time away from my work and from my business. And then eventually you learn that you have to fill your cup first before you
mhm.
can help anyone else. And for me, being in PR in more of a, yes, a very business driven field, but a very creative field, that quiet time is critical for me to do the best work for my clients. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing I
No,
feel guilty for.
no, you are 100% right. That's actually a universal truth, I would say, is you do have to, you need to take that time. And by taking that time, it actually makes whatever you're doing in your career that much better. It's how you up level
Mhm.
your career is by doing that for yourself. I completely agree. And that's an important message that so many people need right now. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yes. Now, I love a story. Could you share a story, something that happened to you, something that was impactful that you learned a lesson from, and other people might learn something by hearing you share it?
Absolutely. This may be a few stories woven into one long
Right.
history. So I know we mentioned it in my bio earlier. A number of years ago, my world was turned upside down by an undiagnosed illness. I was working in entertainment PR. I was on sets until 2 a.m. I was working Sundance Film Festival every year. in a press tent
That's
for
fun.
14 straight days, like amazing opportunities, a lot of rapid career expansion during those years. And that's
So
what I had
your
to do.
company went well.
Thank God. Knock wood. Yes, it did. Yeah, it was an amazing few years. A lot of rapid career expansion, grew exponentially in that time, both personally, professionally, business wise. And then I started to get sick. And it's the thing that no one thinks will happen to them, right? You read about it, you read the human interest stories, and you never think that your own life will be touched by it. Fast forward a year, and I was so sick that I couldn't work anymore. I had to take a break when I
And you
was
didn't know
19.
what it was at this time? Like, it was
It
still undiagnosed?
it took 2 years to receive an accurate diagnosis.
Wow, that's frustrating.
Through that, I learned that unfortunately is not rare. That's very common. Found a doctor, started my treatment, and that was my first challenge and my first lesson was really reexamining my identity. My identity was so wrapped up in my career and what I was achieving, and I think that goes without being said for a lot of people and women, especially in the
Agree.
US. You measure your worth based off of what you're achieving career
Yeah.
wise. So I was forced to form a new identity based on my new experience as a patient. And I got really involved with philanthropy and fundraising for healthcare research and advocacy and legislative change. And as I was going through treatment, spent 2 years really in that space that gave me a lot of purpose to what I was
Mhm.
going through, which I think I needed. And what I didn't know at the time was that while I was doing this work, while I was going through treatment myself, while I was meeting all of these patients across the United States, I was really learning their pain points in the healthcare system and their pain points and how they are spoken to by
Right.
health professionals, by healthcare brands, and that there was a big gap there. So this was my next challenge was, okay, I realize there's this gap. I've seen it myself. I've heard about it now hundreds, if not thousands of times. What professional skills do I have where I can help build this, bridge this gap? And thankfully, when I started to emerge from being so sick and started to regain my health, I slowly but surely went into healthcare PR. So learned how to navigate my career with health limitations, learned how to apply my lived patient experience to PR strategies really successfully, thankfully. And now in 2024, I'm really lucky. Last year in 2023, I embarked on a new treatment that was absolutely grueling, but was thankfully very successful for me.
Good.
But through that time, because of the word of mouth of my business, client roster grew 3x,
Oh, wow. That's
which,
amazing.
yeah, has been really exciting. And I also then had to hire basically 3x. I went from one
Mhm.
employee, now I have 6 employees.
Fantastic. Good for you.
Uh, Thank you. And was really forced to re-examine what am I giving my time and energy to versus what can my team do? Really learning to trust my team, having to build an amazing team that understands the lived patient experience as much as I do.
Mhm.
So I would say that has probably been one of my greatest challenges was number one, that health journey and re-examining what my career was going to look like.
Yeah.
And then number 2, last year, dealing with this treatment and so on and so forth, while simultaneously having my business grow, which is a blessing, but there's a lot that comes along.
A lot, especially if you're going through, like you said, this was a very difficult process. How did
Yes.
you manage that? Is there anything that you found that helped you when you were struggling with these treatments and growing your business at the same time? A lot of people are dealing with
Mhm.
a struggle and growth at the same time. How did you deal with it? What helped?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was number 1, I always like to say that we're a mission-driven PR firm. We really only work with healthcare clients and wellness clients that in some way are making patient lives better, right? Whether
Great.
it's a supplement brand, whether it's an international organization, whether it's a testing lab. But because of that, they all understand what patients are going through. So they understood what I was going through. And it was not challenging to educate on that. And I know that unfortunately is not most people's experiences with limitations on the professional and personal side. So that was great for me. I would say that the second thing that really helped me with this was it once again really forced me to lean on my team and say, okay, I can't always touch everything. I can't always be the one to take these meetings or to put these strategies together. But that's why you hire a great team.
Yes.
That's why you hire people that are better than yourself in other aspects of
Exactly.
your business. Um,
Exactly.
so ultimately, it was a good thing for me.
Yeah. Definitely. Now, I'm curious, what did you take, was it your same business and then you changed direction with from entertainment to healthcare, or did you shut down your business and start up with a new name?
Yeah, it's essentially the same business, just a completely different
The
type
shift.
of communications and type of client.
Yeah.
But
So how did you manage that shift going from entertainment PR where you had all of your connections, you had all this business to this new area, which your story is very compelling. So I would imagine that was that helped quite a bit. But is there anything else that you learned or anything else that you could talk about during that transition that might help other people who are thinking about something similar?
absolutely. I think for me, the most instrumental piece of making that change was looking inward at my network. I don't think that people can discount networking. I think it's everything. Because I was so involved in the philanthropic community and became so known for like my philanthropy and advocacy efforts, I made a lot of connections. And when I decided that I wanted to go back to work, it happened very organically. I just happened to know a very well known doctor that was starting her own practice in Chicago, Case Integrative Health, and wanted media help and wanted PR. And so I dipped my toe in with her. And it's funny because I think the version one of me in entertainment PR was under the notion that we have to build and we have to build fast and move a million miles a minute as if our time is limited on earth. But in reality, we live very long lives, right? Nothing needs to happen overnight. Um, and version two of me, when I went back into healthcare PR, I really took my time and made sure that I was supporting myself, that I was building healthy habits around going back to work, around making sure that the foundation of my business was very strong. Um, and then I had all of the right pieces in place. And I think often we compare ourselves to others and we feel like something needs to happen immediately. And in reality, I know life is so short, but we have so much time, so much time. And it's never too late to restart.
No, it's not.
Just because you're doing one thing and maybe that's not calling to you anymore, which is what happened in my case.
Hmm.
I think entertainment media just felt trivial
Hmm.
versus what I could be doing. And deciding to make that pivot for me was very rewarding and hopefully was a good example for other people that anybody can do it truly.
I love that. More people need to hear that because we're not tied into any one thing. And if something else is calling to our hearts, we really need to listen and make those changes. So thank you. And I loved that you talked about how we tie our identities into our work. I was curious if there's anything that you've learned from that experience. Are you able to hold your identity a little separate now from your career? How has that changed for you is what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I think it's a constant ebb and flow.
Mhm.
I view everything, whether it's I went from having my illness be my entire identity to having to really work on as I got better. Oh, that's just a piece of me. That's not
Right.
my entire being. Same thing with my philanthropic work, right? When I went from work, career work and professionalism to philanthropy, I was, this is now my identity.
Mhm.
There's advocacy and philanthropy. And then when I went back to work, you're like, oh, my identity now is that I am starting a healthcare PR firm. And I think over time, I have realized that we have many different facets to ourselves and everything is just a small piece of who I am, but that I should not view myself as I have a practice now that I like to do that I really measure my success and my goals by that's probably fairly non-traditional where instead of when I do business planning, I do forecasting just like any other business owner, but I'd say the biggest thing for me is I sit and I just think to myself, okay, what feels right, what feels like it's the most rewarding, and then how do I do more of
Mhm.
that? And I kind of work backwards then and say, okay, now what actionable goals do I have to put in place to be able to do more of what's really lighting me up in my career? And I think that really helps me separate out what I feel like I should be doing in my
Mhm.
career or my identity as a healthcare PR firm owner, not getting too stuck in just the pure like business metrics.
Yes. No, so good. So good. I love that advice. Thank you. And I think that's just really important for people to hear. We are the sum of all these little bits and pieces. It is not one thing. And it's really important to see the big, beautiful picture of ourselves and realize that is our identity. It's all of the, like we're a disco ball, right? All the different sparkles, not just one. We got hundreds, thousands.
You are right. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you. So now something I always love to ask people because I'm really passionate about the fact that look, we are being fed information every day. We're just without our permission. And I feel like we're constantly being bombarded with information that doesn't help us or serve us, and we don't always notice it. So I am all about positively feeding my mind in some way, shape, or form. And I love to know how other people do that for themselves. Is there something that you've either read, watched, or listened to that impacted you in a positive way that could impact others in the same?
Yes. I started a basically a quest in January to better support my nervous system. In that quest, I replaced the time that I was spending on my phone with reading or listening to a podcast. And I'm sure you wouldn't be amazed, but would be amazed at the amount of books that you read in that time, right? I think in the first like 3 to 4 months of this year, I read like 13 books or something. So, books and podcasts, more specifically, one of the most impactful books I read was Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty.
Oh, I
Uh,
haven't read that. Oh, okay.
was fantastic. And he spends a lot of time in Think Like a Monk talking about identity shift from basically going to college and in London and wanting to be in finance. And I think he worked at possibly like Deloitte, but one of the big four consulting firms. And then one day he went and he heard a monk speak at school. And he gave it all up to study with this monk and become a monk. And then eventually takes you through being a monk didn't call to him anymore. And how did he take that and shape it into what he is today? But he also gives you all of these really simple tools in his book how to perform a life audit, how to perform a friendship audit, how to make actionable like lists on what you want your life to look like on goal setting. And I think that was probably one of the most impactful books I read.
What's one of the
I, w-
tools that you used from that book that you've found has made a profound impact on you?
I would say both the life audit and the friendship audit.
Mhm. How do you do that? How would you explain to the audience how they should do that?
Yeah, essentially what you do is you make a list, and sometimes it's like a square with four buckets depending on which one you're doing. And sometimes it's just a straight up list. And you look at in my life, like, how am I spending my time? Who am I spending my time with? Do I feel good most of the time? Do I feel not so great most of the time? What am I eating? What do my nervous system habits look like? And it really, when you get it all down on paper, it does force you to look at like a majority of your time. How do you feel? What does that look like? Am I supporting myself? Am I taking away from myself? And same thing with that friendship audit. It's very simple, but when you are forced to look at who you're spending time with and how you feel during that time and after that time, and you look at that on a piece of paper,
Mhm.
it does force you to reevaluate, which can be a very challenging thing to do.
They're very
Uh,
powerful. Very powerful.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
I agree. I think these are life-changing practices, that self-awareness and bringing that home when you do something like that, it does open up your eyes in so many different ways that you didn't realize. And that's how you make change. That's how you make positive change. You have to become aware first. That's in order
Absolutely.
to be able to move forward in the right direction. So fantastic. But thank you for sharing that. That's great. Now, before you go, because this has been wonderful, I've
Yes.
loved everything, but I would love to ask you about your personal superpower because I believe that we are born with certain superpowers and then there are superpowers that we develop over time. Is there a superpower that you developed over time that's benefited your life and how has it helped?
I would say my superpower through my health journey that I have really taken into my career and my everyday life is resilience. I know it's not a fun superpower like
So
flying or like laser
important.
beams, which would be very cool. But I think that resilience is a quality both in your personal life and your professional life that can't be discounted, and just always having the ability to get back up when you have a challenge or you have an adversity. Yeah. So I think for me, it would be resilience.
I think it's one of our more underrated personal superpowers, to be honest with you. I think resilience is key to successful life and in general. It's that what are those dolls that you'd hit and they'd bounce right back up? That's what we want to be in life, right? That's what resilience is.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
being able to because the bad things are going to happen. There's no way around them. So being able to learn how to deal with them in the best way and come back in life is a gift. So
Absolutely.
is there anything that's helped you with resilience? I'm curious. Ah,
I think once again, it's been different at different points in my
yeah,
life. I think for me, around my health journey, it was finding a purpose to my pain and also
right,
finding out that I wasn't the only one that
right.
was having that experience, that it was a
Mhm.
shared experience. I think now in my life day to day, I really realized that no one's life is perfect. We
Mhm.
see everyone's highlight reel online, but in reality, that's not real
Mhm.
life. And everyone has their own things that they're dealing with, their own set of challenges. And I'm no different.
Yeah.
And often when I look at specifically things that have happened in my work life or in my career that feel really disappointing at the time, because not 100% of things do not go your way and they're not always meant to for reasons that you don't know.
No, exactly.
It has led to something better in the end, which I know sounds very cheesy.
It's not
But
cheesy at all. I call
I'm
it a
glad.
universal law, to be honest with you.
I, that's also what I think. So that's the mindset that I try to have now is
Yes.
there's a reason for this and I just don't know what it is, but something better is coming.
Yes, I completely agree. And a lot of people will struggle with the, oh, everything happens for a reason. And it's not necessarily that everything happens for a reason, but things
Mhm.
happen. And this is where you are. This happens. So this is where you're at. So now you get to choose. You can either let that take you down. You can go down the spiral, which look, we can go down spirals and you can take yourself out of the spiral. That's also not just good to remember. Sometimes the
Yeah.
spiral happens and then you just recognize it and take yourself out. But understanding that you can make a decision, you can choose to find a reason is a really important thing to understand and finding you look for the purpose, right? You find purpose
Yes.
and to help you move forward. And this is how we find resilience in life. So it, really thank you. Such great advice. I could keep talking to you for quite a while, but I know we need to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining me, Alex. I appreciate you being on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast. If you find value in learning from others, give us a like and subscribe. If you're looking to grow your communications, marketing, public relations, or sales and biz dev team with the best talent and quickly, check us out at paradigmstaffing.com and submit a request. We are wishing you a most successful and fulfilling career. Until next time.